Yo, what is up, guys? It is Adrian Enchel doing another fitness video. And I was talking with a gentleman in the gym because I was telling him how I'm doing or taking some time off of powerlifting or this power building series, and I'm just kind of giving my body a rest. I still wanted to crank out a video. And he basically said, hey, you know what you should do? You should do like an A to Z video. Like, how did you get from where you were to where you are literally today? Like, if you were to backtrack and literally point out every single step of what you did, and then also talk about like what went right and what you did also incorrectly, that would probably help a lot of people in juxtaposition to just showing them, how to lift the weight. And I was like, that's a great idea. So today that's what I'm going to kind of do. So kind of sit back and buckle along because you guys are going to see the ins and outs of my fitness journey and how everything kind of got started for me. So I'll never forget, I was maybe like 6 years old, and I remember the first time like I saw somebody that was like really in physical shape, like somebody that was like quite frankly jacked. Like if you were to see them, you were like, whoa, oh my God, like what is that? How does a person get in shape? I was getting ready for camp. I was like 6 years old, and my two older brothers were getting ready for camp, and this gentleman was basically picking them up to drop them off for camp. And I remember I was playing with his truck, and he like stopped by our house, and I just remember looking up while I was playing with his truck and being like, whoa, like what is that? Like, how do you even do that? And I just remember telling myself from a very young age, I was like, I'm gonna look like that. I don't know how he does that, but that's so cool. I want to look like that one day. And it's funny because that was kind of the first thing. The first thing was like the belief that like I'm gonna look like that one day. And I think that was like something that as I was getting ready to make this video, I was like, that was actually the first thing that came in my mind, was like the general belief that like I was gonna look like that one day. And I think it's something that everybody has to have. Like, you have to have a true belief that you're going to get there at some point, right? So that was really the first time I'd seen anything like that in my life. And then from about the age of 10 years old is when I really kind of started doing some weight training and seeing, kind of lifting and exercising. So growing up, I played a lot of sports. I played football, lacrosse, basketball. I played a little bit of hockey as well. And, for me, I just started off by doing push-ups. I didn't go to a gym. I didn't do anything crazy. I just did push-ups in my basement. We had these little 5-pound dumbbells. But I think that doing push-ups was really instrumental to just my overall fitness journey because it gave me a baseline of strength. And I think today a lot of people just like hop into the gym, and that's totally fine. You can totally just hop into the gym and just start. But just doing like hundreds of push-ups every night from about like the age of like 11 and 12 years old was kind of a good starting point for me, because it also just taught me how to be consistent and do something every single day, day in and day out. I even look at my life now and I go, whoa, like there's some days I just don't want to go to the gym, but I've just built in that consistency pattern where going to the gym is almost like breathing at this point. It's like I know at some point I'm going to do it in my during these 24 hours. It's like brushing my teeth. It's routine. Like I know I'm going to go to the gym, unless obviously it kind of changed as I got older, because obviously you need rest to be able to recover. You can't go to the gym every single day, but it's the ability to do something every single day, day in and day out. So I just started with a bunch of push-ups. And then from there, I kind of just use the internet. And what's amazing about the internet is you can quite frankly find everything on there. So I started with just doing kind of bodybuilding workouts. If I even backtrack before, when I was like 12, I started out by watching like I forgot, it's like Mike Chang, I can't remember his name, but he was an Asian gentleman. He would do a bunch of, ab routines and push-ups, and I just followed that. I was like, all right, I'm going to do those like ab routines and workouts. And I think, when I look at how I physically developed in terms of like my core and also my chest, a lot of that stemmed from, having those base years under my belt from my youth development of just doing push-ups. Like, people always ask, like, man, how did you get your chest so big? And it's honestly just like doing push-ups. And push-ups and core exercises, all of that is really like a form of calisthenics. So I guess like the first thing that I kind of got right and that I kind of did in my fitness journey was just learning how to kind of master my own body and move in my own body, like doing body weight squats. And when you look at, people who can, move like 600 pounds or 700 pounds or do these crazy feats of strength, they also have extreme body control. And I think, playing a sport like lacrosse and, playing basketball, all that gave me great body control. But a lot of it also just stemmed from, those late night sessions where I would do those little at home workouts, and they carried me a long way. So I started lifting weights at about the age of 14, or I believe it was around 14 or 14. Yes, about the age of 14, I would say. And I started just lifting weights, and it was awesome. I got the iron bug immediately. I was always just a rather skinny kid, so I didn't look that big, but like I was still a relatively toned kid, and I would do all these workouts from bodybuilding.com. I'm sure if anybody's watching, you've seen the forums where there were all the forums where you could just see like a pull day and you could see a bench press day. And I didn't really know how to execute any of the movements. And I don't think, there's anything wrong with that. What I focused in on was more so just getting the exercises done, and then also being cognizant of how my body moved, right? So being cognizant of when I would do a bench press, for example, like, oh, if my elbows are flared, that means my shoulders would kind of be tweaked a little bit. And maybe I would have a little bit more chest activation. But if I snap my elbows in on a bench press, oh, now my triceps are more engaged. Now my shoulders don't really hurt. And now, it feels a little bit more natural. So what I would do is I would always kind of like pick an exercise for the week, and I try to kind of learn and master that exercise. It's funny because when I first started at a young age, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to learn how to build my chest in year 1. And then in year 2, I'm going to learn how to build my legs. And then in year 3, I'm going to learn how to build my arms. And that was funny. Eventually, like, I grew out of that mindset in my first year, but yeah, I just did all the bodybuilding.com exercises on the forums, and it was a good starting point. And I think, those exercises are still available. Anybody can do them, but that's what I really honed in on. And then from there, something else that I did was I was an athlete. So I didn't just really train, I guess, for like looking good or being able to lift the most amount of weight. What I was really trying to train for was trying to become as good of a lacrosse player as possible and to play collegiate lacrosse. So I really emphasized functional strength. So, there would be months where I would focus in on functional strength. And then from functional strength, I would go from, kind of powerlifting workouts. And then from there, I would go into bodybuilding workouts. And this is something I've never really harped on, and I've never heard harped on in the fitness industry. But I can really tie it to an analogy, and I think once I tie it, you guys can kind of see what I'm saying. If you have an athlete who specializes in a sport from a very young age, sometimes that athlete doesn't become as good as they could be. And the reason why is that their body doesn't become as dynamic, right? So if I have a lacrosse player who specializes in only lacrosse, he can only get so good, or by the time he gets to high school, he'll be good. But if I have another athlete who focuses in on football, and he focuses in on basketball, and he focuses in on playing lacrosse, he might not be as good as the athlete who only does lacrosse, but in the long run, when he gets to college, he has more room to grow. And I think the same thing can be said about my fitness journey. I never just only focused in on, let's get really big triceps. I focused in on, let's get good at functional movements. Let's learn the basic biomechanics, because in the long run, what happened for me is that I ended up becoming more dynamic. So what do I mean? When you train only bodybuilding, for example, your body is only working in the sagittal plane. So it doesn't really learn how to rotate. It doesn't learn how to. You're moving only linear, I guess is what I'm saying. And the human body's so dynamic. It has so many different functions. And that's one of the things that I think is really sad is a lot of people just go, oh, well, I just want to look this way. And the thing is, like, a lot of people don't think about, like, functional strength and things like a Zecher squat and things like side lateral lunges. These are, you're moving out of the just that linear plane of motion, and you're teaching your body to be more dynamic. And the funny thing about also functional strength is that when you train for like functional strength and performance and doing it at a high level, what you'll find is you'll still build a great physique. Even now, I still haven't even honed in on just training for quote unquote bodybuilding. And I think even if maybe I'll make the thumbnail this, but if you clicked on this because of the thumbnail, I bet you'd go, oh, he's a bodybuilder. But the truth is I'm not. Like, I'm just the guy who likes lifting weights. Now, I've had phases where I've done bodybuilding, and I've had phases where I've only done powerlifting, but I've allowed myself to flow because if you think about your fitness journey, if you think about life, you lift for your whole entire life. It's not like there's a time frame where you can only do bodybuilding. You have lifting for your whole entire journey. And I think when you incorporate a more holistic approach to fitness becomes a lot more fun because you don't get burned out from only doing bodybuilding. So from, I would say about the ages of 14 all the way to 16, I kind of mixed it up. And then around the age of 16, I worked for the first time with a kid who wanted to become a professional bodybuilder. And he was my coach. And he was so instrumental into my fitness journey because he showed me so many things that I didn't realize. And this is one of the things, too, that I would say is really important is if you can, along the way, get a coach that you can work one-on-one with and have training sessions with. They can show you things like the force reps. They can show you things like partials. They can show you about controlling eccentrics, having mind-muscle connection, and even concepts like time under tension. And I know time under tension gets bashed in the fitness industry, but I think there's something to be said about time under tension. I don't want to go into that rabbit hole, but listen, what I'm getting at is that having that coach really gave me the guidance on how to train and how to have proper form. And then on top of that, I also was just always intrinsically motivated to continue to learn and continue to read. And another piece too at this time is I started to look at people that were really successful in that field and people who built physiques and built levels of strength that I wanted to emulate. And I started to implement parts of their game into my fitness journey. So what I would do is I would study people that I really liked. Let me get into the people that I studied. So Frank Zane was a huge piece for me. I also studied Russell Laurie, John Hack. That was kind of more later towards when I was in college. And then I also studied strongman. And I just took pieces from their game and continued to learn and implement it into my fitness journey. And I was never afraid to experiment with things. So I would experiment and see like how am I like responding to these training stimuluses. And throughout that whole entire process, even from the age of 16, I started writing down my workouts. And guys, if there's one thing that you do take from this video is definitely write down your workouts because you can run in place for years on end and not get better if you're not writing down, how am I performing from week to week. And sometimes, everyone gets so obsessed with progressive overload, and sometimes it's just not progressive overload. Sometimes it's, quite frankly, progressive form. So how is my form actually progressed over time? Like, I might be using the same weight, like an 85-pound dumbbell press on shoulder press or whatever, but this week I'm controlling the eccentrics a significantly more amount of time. So I was like, I always, I guess what I'm saying is I always wrote down my exercises. And are there days where I mess up and I don't write down an exercise? Yeah, like that happens. Like no one's going to be perfect. Maybe C-Bum. But like to the extent that I would say like 90% of the time I wrote down my workouts. And then from there, I continued to progress and just keep getting better. And, by that time I was probably starting to get into college, and I, built up a pretty solid amount of strength. And I also just built up a pretty solid physique through, kind of just dabbling in different forms of fitness, consistently writing down my weights. And then from there in college, I had a workout partner, and he was really helpful for me, because when you can find a workout partner, someone who's truly motivated and someone who loves fitness to the same extent that you do, I mean, you guys can grow off of one another. I don't think, fitness is this thing where you should only, it's individualistic, where it's only all on you. I think you can learn from other people. And my training partner was very instrumental in my fitness journey, because everybody comes from a different background in fitness, right? So there's someone out there who knows something that you don't know. And when I would work out with my training partner in college, he would do things that I just quite frankly have never seen done in my life before. Like, he would do sets for time. Like, we're going to do biceps curls for 2 minutes. And I remember just like the first time I did that, I was like, that's so stupid. But I remember the results that I got from that, and how tired and how sore I was. And, sore isn't always an indicator of results, but I remember my body being hit in a new way. And I would say that having that training partner who had a different perspective on fitness and who could dabble in and sprinkle in new concepts really was instrumental to my overall fitness journey. And then around at this point, I kind of started to get into more of powerlifting and more into really focusing in on strength. And the reason why strength training spoke to me more is because there's really a clear objective winner, right? So if we're both on both at a meet or both on a platform, and one of us gets 500 and the other gets 505, we know who the winner is. And I like that aspect of fitness more, so I started going into more strength training. And I never completely veered off of trying to build a physique and trying to get better, but it was more so trying to get stronger, in the overhead press, bent over row, squat, bench press, deadlift. Deadlift was actually a little tricky because I started deadlift a little bit later. It was a little bit slower, and that might be one of the reasons why I still squat more than I deadlift. But yeah, I started doing powerlifting, and this is one of the things where I kind of messed up, and I think you guys can, kind of fix in your journey if you're on it. But one of the things I messed up with is, I didn't know the benefit of having a program. And at this point, I had gotten my second coach, really. So I've had 3 coaches in my fitness journey. I'm not going to go name them all off. But this second coach really showed me the importance of a program and how beautiful programming can be when it's done correctly. So obviously there's periodization in a program. I'm not going to go too much in depth on this, but there's linear, there's block, there's daily undulating periodization. And all of these are different methodologies to basically prime the body, so that way you can basically lift the most amount of weight in X amount of time. And as you get further, what's funny in fitness is today, everybody's like, oh, I need to be as optimal as I can. Everything needs to be perfect. For most people who are just getting started, you just need to show up and lift day in and day out. The science-based lifting, that is really beneficial, in my opinion, for the guy who's, in year, 6, 7. Like, that's when, being on a program and really narrowing in on what percentages you do is really beneficial. And my strength from when I started doing programming skyrocketed, because there is no accidental way you end up squatting 600 pounds. There's no way. You can't do it. You have to do it through a program. And the programming is what guided me. It allowed me, to have clear routines that I'm going to do day in and day out consistently, writing down all of my weights, writing down how long I would do a plank for, writing down how long, just writing down everything. Also, something else that was really helpful when I started doing programming and bodybuilding and powerlifting is that I started to develop my core. I started to develop my core and my glutes. And obviously I had great core strength from calisthenics and bodyweight workouts and bodybuilding, but there's a different level of core strength and glute strength that comes from powerlifting and doing things like Zeekr squats, doing things like kettlebell swings. And these are exercises that your typical bro science guy or guy who does a bro split won't perform, but these are exercises that yield heavy results. And another thing that came from powerlifting is it gave me a really, really vicious mindset. You know, I'll talk about mindset a little bit too in my fitness journey, because that's something else that I got right. But those powerlifting workouts really gave me an iron mindset. Now, when it comes to mindset, throughout my whole entire fitness journey, one, I had the belief that I could build the physique, but the other thing too is I was always able to tap into my real life problems and allow them to seep into my actual training sessions. So, I don't talk about this, and oftentimes when I do film myself working out, I'll oftentimes edit it out. But I'm pretty tapped when I'm in the gym. A lot of people see me smile and, yeah, I'm a nice guy. But when I'm in the gym, some of the things that I've thought about are so tapped and so dark. And I think you kind of have to have that mindset to move 600 pounds, right? I don't think you can be happy-go-lucky and smiley all the time if you're moving that kind of weight. I think you have to really dig deep and, go to those dark places to be able to do those feats of strength. And I think some of the best lifters and honestly some of the best athletes in general, if you really study them, they have really they're great people, but they definitely have dark minds to some extent. And they allow, even their insecurities to seep into their training, right? For example, Kobe Bryant. A lot of people don't know this about Kobe, but Kobe, if you've ever listened to Kobe's actual story from his own perspective, and what it was like for him growing up in Italy and being practically the only black person there, and how he trained and how he would take out, all of his insecurities and all the negative things that were going on in his life, and how he would pour that into basketball. That is one of the reasons why he became such a great basketball player. Yes, he had a great work ethic. And I'm not comparing myself to Kobe Bryant at all. But what I'm getting at is that mindset and that ability to go to that dark place is something that, I think you need to kind of be able to tap into if you want to get further in your fitness journey. One of the things that I always state is that your mind has to be your strongest thing in fitness. Your mind has to be the strongest thing in fitness. Whether you're doing bodybuilding, whether you're doing powerlifting, strongman, your mind. Well, I would take my mindset over nutrition. I would take my mindset over sleep. I would take my mindset over periodization. Your mind is so powerful. There have been sets in powerlifting. I mean, you guys are watching the channel. You guys know what I was talking about earlier with squatting, how I was just nervous versus when I just decided hey, I'm going to attack this weight head on and I don't care. I'm going to go at it. That's when I saw results. I saw results when I was going at the weight, like a banshee, like a bat out of hell, pouring all of my actual real life problems into the sessions. And that's I think it's one of the most important things is the mind and your ability to tap into those dark places. So that would be the next thing, and the mind was definitely something that was really instrumental into my fitness journey. And now we're kind of starting to catch up to where I am today. So one of the things that I did not do well in my fitness journey was my ability to listen to my own body. So now I've gotten better at it, but, there was a year, post college, early on in banking, where I tore part of my quad. And I remember, right before I went for the squat, my body was telling me that it was off. And this is one of the things that, regardless of whatever stage you are in fitness, you need to master the ability of listening to your body, right? Because your body typically will tell you when an injury is going to happen. A lot of people think when something is tight, it means that I need to stretch. And sometimes it's true. Sometimes you need to stretch and you need a foam roll. But sometimes when your body is tight, it's actually because it's a weak link. Sorry, weak link. It's a weak link inside of your body. So sometimes it's like your body's way of telling you like this part of your body is weak and you need to build it up, right? And oftentimes you build it up through, slow negatives and, really listening and making sure that you're having adequate amounts of water, making sure that you're getting the right amount of rest. But to go back to all of this, your ability to listen to your body, sorry. I've been talking for so long that I'm going to start stumbling on my words a little bit. But your ability to listen to your body is so crucial. And this is one of the things, too, where if I say like something that I got wrong is going off of program a lot, because most of the times when I got injured, I was also off of program. But also sometimes when I got really, really strong, I was also off of program. So I know I'm just saying like two things that are contradictory, but what I'm trying to get at also is that not all of this stuff is black and white, right? There are going to be times in your program where you will realize like, hey man, I could actually right now do 600 for 3. I really think I can. And if you have that feeling, that window might be open right then and there. You should go and seize it. But there are also other times, and this is where it's going to get kind of weird in the video, where you're like, you kind of have to learn how to read the gray area, where it's like, hey, I don't even think I could do my top set right now. And that's okay. Like the strength wavers and every block in terms of your programming starts to alter. It starts to alter. Like sometimes some blocks go really well and sometimes some blocks go really, really poorly. And I think something that I'm kind of developing now as well is like trying to not read too much into a block. Trying to not read too much into a bad gym performance, because sometimes it's like, man, I did everything right. I slept perfectly. I ate perfectly. I did everything perfectly. And I'm losing and I'm going backwards, right? And it's the ability to take 2 steps back, breathe in and be like, hey, like you got this. You're going to be fine. These things happen, right? So that is one of the things I will say. And now at this point, I'm kind of getting a little bit, deep into this video, so I don't want to ramble too much. But that kind of is where I've kind of gone from A to Z in my fitness journey. There's obviously more things that I can go into depth in terms of nutrition, how I started to learn how to count macros, the importance of sleep, my supplementation and diet. Maybe I'll do a part 2 to this video, but yeah, for right now, I'm going to just leave it at that. But as always, when I finish these videos, I always try to say, like, I'll see you guys at the top. And I really do mean that. I'll see you guys at the top. We're all climbing our own fitness journeys. And I hope everybody who does follow me genuinely, climbs the own top of their own mountain. Because we all have different goals. Some of us want to deadlift a gajillion pounds. Some of us want to look really good for our wives. Some of us just want to be able to have good mental health. Some of us, just want to actually be healthy, right? And everybody has their own different journeys. And I think, I really hope all of you guys reach the top of your own journeys. And on top of that, remember, like, fitness it's amazing, but it can be taken away from us at any point. And quite frankly, at the end of the day, like, I love this stuff. I live for this stuff and I die for this stuff, but it's a hobby. And don't, don't put too much pressure on yourself. I don't want to ramble too much, but yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one and I'll see you at the top. Peace out.